Do you think the investor's expectation of rent return has significantly have become higher? Are they asking for more money nowadays?
Yes and no. So anytime
Do you really think we have a big rental problem here in Fraser Coast?
a housing crisis, absolutely. I still think we have a national housing crisis, to be honest. And
Is it very hard to get good tenants?
no, I don't think it's very hard to get good tenants. I think it's about being selective and.
So anybody investing in Fraser Coast, what should they keep in mind as investor?
As an investor, the first thing is I think it's a great area to invest in first and foremost.
So as a property manager, what are your 3 pet hates?
Oh, my 3 pet hates. Gosh, that's a good question.
So what are your commission, like what is your structure when it comes to investor?
We do a flat fee, so it's a bit different to your typical percentage base.
Hey guys, welcome to Studio 9. My name is Nathan Menon, and if you're an investor or a property owner looking to invest right here in Fraser Coast, well, this is the podcast that you really don't want to miss, because our today's guest, she's a mother, she's an entrepreneur, and a cracker of a property manager with 300 plus houses under her belt managing properties. Let me welcome Tara Bradbury from Active Agent.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Tara, welcome to the podcast. So I know that off camera we had a bit of a chat in regards to the property, your journey. So tell us about your journey. How did you start into property market business? How long you've been in the Bay Area? And yeah, a bit of yourself.
So I actually grew up on the Fraser Coast. I went to school in Maryborough and started my real estate career up there in 2002. Originally in grade 12, I was in a work experience role, and the lady who was looking after me at the time has an investment property with the business, and that was my first business that I worked with in Maryborough, and went into a receptionist role, did a traineeship, and then the rest is history, and I've continued in the real estate space for my entire working career now, where we are now, obviously having Active Agents for the last 5 years. That was established in 2019 here in Hervey Bay.
Wow. So you are like a you are a real estate agent, and you've done property management.
Yes, yeah. So I've always stayed in the property management space. I've had a combination of being an agent active in the industry as well as a trainer, and I've always had my principal license. I had that, oh gosh, for at least the last 12 years, but the timing of where I was in my world, and certainly with my husband Shane, I just wasn't quite ready to start a business, and I was actually waiting for the technology and different software programs to catch up with the type of model that I wanted to release into the area, and that happened in 2019, and here we are now.
Fantastic. With 323 properties under Tara's belt at the moment, she's doing phenomenal in Fraser Coast. How does this journey connect you? So did you always knew that you were getting into this direction of getting more properties under your belt, or it happened overnight, or you gradually start picking up, or did you get one big like bulk few houses from an investor or things like that? How did it start?
I think we'd all love it to happen overnight, but that's not a realistic outcome in any growth of business. But for me, my background prior to Active Agents was working in another real estate business, which was across Maryborough and Hervey Bay, called Bay Prestige Properties. And when I was in that business, I was a full-time BDM. So my role was completely focused on the growth of the rent roll. And I was comfortably signing anywhere from 10, 20, I think my biggest month was 30 properties in 1 month that I signed up when I was working within that organisation. And at the time when that business had sold, it was, I think, 658 properties it sold, and there was a portion in Maryborough and a portion in Hervey Bay. Time progressing forward and as starting my own business, I've probably had a different perspective, and hence why the business is where it is now, as you mentioned, at the 323 properties, because you do have to be so careful with the type of properties and type of clients that you take on to make sure that the business that you're growing is protected as well, the asset. So we've had quite a few different growth funnels, interestingly enough, over this last 5 years. Certainly in kind of year 2 and year 3, there was a lot of activity with investors coming into the market because our rents moved first, and then as we saw the property prices then followed after that. So that was a great opportunity for investors to come through, and lots of buyers agents for those investors. But if I was honest, I would say the Hervey Bay marketplace and Facebook and social media at this stage where we are in our business today is by far the biggest lead generation for us in the growth of our rent roll.
Oh, okay. So social media have played a significant role.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that people need to remember you don't have to have massive budgets of advertising that you're spending in the digital space. It's social media and it's to be social. That's the whole idea behind it. And our brand is very active within that space. We live by the name of our business being Active Agents. And certainly when people reach out to us, whether they're supporting us in a post online, I'll make sure we get on there and we thank them or interact with them, because anytime someone's passing on a recommendation for your business, it's important to say thank you. And those types of things have just been a really strong vision within our brand, and it's worked really well for us.
So you predominantly cover majority of Hervey Bay. Do you do Maryborough or Burham Heads?
No, and interestingly enough, that's something that I probably gained from my experience when I was working in the Prestige Properties brand, is that we did cover both Maryborough and Hervey Bay, and the staff numbers that we had sufficed for that to work. But at the size that we are now, and probably how I want to see the business grow now too, we really specialise and focus on just as far as Craignish, so we don't actually have any properties out in the Toowoomba area. Not out in Maryborough either. We kind of stop it around that Nikenbar area, and then as far as Riverhead, so it's quite centralised in the middle of Hervey Bay.
So do your journey, I know last 3 years have been significant real estate push in Hervey Bay. What kind of investors, are you seeing predominantly investors that are coming into the market, or homeowners buying and renting?
Yeah. I will say this, each year's been very different in the last 5 years. I think if we had a crystal ball and we could kind of predict what's going to happen next year, that would be amazing. But I've certainly noticed that in the first year, so the 2019 year coming into 2020, more investors. So we had the ability to pick up a lot more properties for our rent roll. And then probably we're in 2024 now, so 2023 and 2022, we did see a lot of activity of investors that have been long-term in Hervey Bay that were selling out and putting their money into other areas, because obviously they've made seen fantastic growth when they've been purchasing the last 5 to 10 years. So I would suggest that there's definitely been a combination of both. But what was really clear to me, especially in the last 5 years, is I saw quite a few investors come through that purely have purchased and must just follow all different areas around the country to buy in. They make their 100,000, they pull out, and then they go on to the next area. And then in this last 12 months, we're seeing more of investors that are in it more for the long game. So they aren't necessarily getting a higher rental yield right now, but they know long term the growth is going to be there for them.
More equity growth or the rental returns and things like that. Yes, I completely agree too. Even in the business of that we are in, of selling houses and development and everything, we've seen locals have cashed in and getting into bigger house or renovating into bigger, nice, building new houses, and investors pouring in, buying those houses and renting it out in the market. How much shift you have seen in the last 3 years with rental?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at, as an example, a typical 4-bedroom home. So 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a double lock-up car accommodation. I'll probably show the example of 5 years first. Looking back then, we were renting those types of homes for $380 to $400 a week. Now they're quite comfortably $600 a week. So massive growth for certainly investors. And probably, I would suggest on average, easily $100 to $150 a week, but obviously some have seen that significant growth of, $200 more a week in their investment.
Do you think the investors' expectation of rent return has significantly have become higher? Are they asking for more money nowadays?
Yes and no. So anytime when I have a rent review with any of our clients, I will ask them, and I'll go through the different stages of, here's what's happening in the market at the moment, but where are you positioned? What's going to be best for you with your investment property? Because some owners they just don't increase the rent at all. We actually have a handful of owners that don't have any debt over their investment properties, and they choose not to have increases, and that's obviously completely their decision. We have some that do more smaller increments. They know that the market's probably a little bit further ahead. They're not too far behind, but they're only doing $10 or $20 a week. And then we have other investors that push right up. If there's $50 there more that I can be getting, I need that. And everyone's got their own financial background of what they need to be able to achieve to maintain the investment property and retain it as well. So we definitely have. It's more a one-on-one conversation. It's not, here's the market, you have to be at this rent price. This is the opportunity of what you can do. Where do you see yourself and where would you like to be?
Yeah. So being in, like, as a property manager, what kind of challenges that you really see running a business, especially in Fraser Coast? Having 300 houses. I know a lot of times I hear when I talk to a lot of property managers or agencies that have property management, they say, oh my God, that's one of the difficult things to manage, because you're managing investors, you're managing homeowners, you're in the middle tackling the both side of it, and it's just not one time. Like for a real estate agent, you sell the house, it's done pretty much, and then you move on to the next one. But for you, a client stays with you for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and building that relationship and bond, like you have to always stay in touch and do the best for your clients. It can be very challenging, knowing that property market business. So how do you tackle that? Like, what are your key drivers that make your team the best, deliver the best product, best service? How do you do it day in, day out?
I think for me, I set the expectations from day one really clearly to our clients, and at the end of the day, and the team knows, from Monday right through to the end of the week, the main goal is what's the best outcome for the property. And there's obviously multiple people that are involved in that transaction. So you have your landlord, your tenant, and your tradesperson, because from time to time you have trades coming in and out of properties and working on different things. So if I was to say that there is a challenge, it's making sure that we not only meet those expectations, but we educate our clients on what to expect from us, so that they're not putting additional pressure on my team, which is what then creates the stresses that you're referring to. And some weeks I find myself having more conversations directly with clients, trying to, I guess, educate them on it's okay if this answer comes tomorrow versus you needing it yesterday. Yeah. And that's fair enough, because no matter what anyone says, COVID has completely changed our world.
Absolutely.
And what has come from that is people's expectations and demands are higher. And we want things yesterday regardless. It doesn't matter how anybody else sees it. If we believe we must have it now, then that is what we expect. And that's probably where I spend a lot of my time. And I tend to refer a lot to running a property management department, like running an emergency department. And it really is some days. And I do spend that time, whether it is one of those, 3 people involved in that property transaction, just reminding them and educating them, saying it's not being missed, it is happening, and the team are also doing that as well. However, we've just had to move through some other areas first, but rest assured, you'll get that answer that you deserve or that you need.
Yeah. I think same thing I've seen a lot of times. I think people want instant answers. Nobody wants to wait anymore. Yeah. They say, and the business has become so competitive that you miss a phone call, you lose the client. Yes. Pretty much. And that's why even I've seen real estate, and same thing what we do is pretty much when you get a phone call, no matter how busy you are, you acknowledge the phone saying, hey, I might get back to you, even if it's your client or anything, because, one lost phone call is pretty much a lost client, because clients are always chasing and looking around. They're shopping around nowadays. And I think that's what COVID has changed. People want everything now. Yeah. And I completely. Do you really think we have a big rental problem here in Fraser Coast?
A housing crisis? Yeah. Absolutely. I still think we have a national housing crisis, to be honest, and we have a new government now in Queensland, and we have a new state member here in Hervey Bay as well. So I'm really curious to see what changes do happen over this next 4 years. I think change is always exciting and brings new opportunity. Where we have a problem, certainly on the Fraser Coast and in Hervey Bay, is we need more government housing. That's where the issue is, and I've seen it myself within our business where we've had tenants that have either not been offered a lease extension or have had to vacate because they can't keep up with that rental demand of that, the increases that are expected of them. But they're actually not bad tenants and they're not bad people. They need something that's more affordable housing and that's going to suit their financial income. Unfortunately, in our space, as property managers, we don't have the properties that meet that brief. But if there is more government housing, that can potentially assist with that. There is programs that are out there, head lease programs and different things, which I think could become more powerful. Not to get too political, but they could be so much more powerful if they were designed a little bit differently, because unfortunately they're not set up well to protect the investor. They are more in favour of the tenant. But I suspect that those types of things will continue to get reviewed. But that middle kind of area where you've got the single income earner or the parents that are both working hard but their incomes are just never going to meet that brief of, if they've got 3 or 4 kids, $600 a week is a lot of money.
Yeah. So, but if someone's watching as an audience in this podcast and someone wants to know what is a government housing?
Government housing is basically where the government contributes to your housing. So you're offered a property that would be, say, a 4-bedroom home that's similar to another 4-bedroom home in the market now, and they may only pay $400 a week. So they will then assess their income to see where they can meet the brief versus paying the market rent.
Yeah. So it's owned by private investors, but the government chips in,
They
top it up with whatever the rental is. But do you think if that happens, will that push the rental up?
Look, I think I still think that our rents will remain. A lot of people say that our market will have a dip. I think Hervey Bay has actually progressed really well forward since COVID. So I don't foresee that we will have a dip in rents, even if we can solve part of that problem in, that person that's needing a property more so up to that $400, $500 a week. So I do think that I think our rents will continue to settle now. I don't see us doing massive increases in the next couple of years. I think we've hit the peak and we're sitting at the peak stage still at the moment.
So because you're the forefront of any investor who wants to come into property market, because they say property managers play a key role when it comes to, because you guys are assessing the rentals, you know where the market sits, the occupancy, because any investor who comes to Fraser Coast, the first question we get is, what is the occupancy rate? Pretty much, and then they say, the occupancy rate is, what is the occupancy rate right?
We're still under 1%. Yeah, so it's always moving, and you'll see that on realestate.com as well. In the last couple of years, we've seen anywhere from 40 to 50 properties being available, which is a very challenging market for tenants, not a lot of variety. At the moment, we actually have over 100, if you look in Hervey Bay on realestate.com. That's still a really positive market for an investor. And within our office, what we're finding is that we advertise the property, we have a pre-booked open for inspection, there's applications that are coming in prior because we have a virtual tour included as well. We're working on those applications, presenting them to the owner, doing the open for inspection, and we're not needing to do a second inspection. So that gives you kind of a visual as to how the market's moving. I think as an investor, it's always important where you can to be 2-4 weeks ahead of the game with your marketing, so then when it's coming to that stage that you really want to have that rental income, you're prepared rather than leaving it till the last minute. Certainly don't think that you can walk into an office and in 24 hours you can have an agent go out and start your advertising. It's just an unrealistic expectation for any real estate business now, so it's best to be organised as an investor.
So you say 1% rental. So you think having more houses on the market should ease the pressure down?
I think it's difficult to kind of assess now because we're in our peak time as well. So November to February is our most busiest period, which I anticipate in a lot of areas.
Why do you say that?
It's very transitional now. So this is where we see certainly in the medical space. So I work directly with the head of accommodation up at the hospital, and she sends through lots of contacts of families that are looking for properties now. And there's quite a few that will look in the lead up to Christmas, and those others that will wait till after Christmas and look January, February for when they want to arrive. But that's another area where we're lacking housing, is for those in the medical space as well. We really need accommodation where you've got 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartments, because we are finding single doctors that are coming through, or maybe a couple, that are taking 4-bedroom homes because they're new and they want to be in something that's modern and fresh, but there's no units available for rent. So then they're taking up that level of housing. So then you've got the challenge of what we're talking about with affordable housing and not having enough affordable stock, but we actually don't have enough units and that type of stock for our medical precinct of doctors and stuff that are coming through.
There's always a myth, like as an investor, if you have a 4-bedder, you're going to get good rental. And if you have only a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, it stays there for long-term growth.
You have the risk potentially, And a 4-bedroom home in Hervey Bay is safe. No matter what, we do have a high demographic of families that are here in the region, and we're certainly seeing that grow as well. So I can appreciate, as an investor, when you are looking at a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment, there is a risk because there's still only so many people that are wanting that size property.
Yeah. So where do you see this market moving in the next few years? I know that there's no crystal ball for anybody, and I wish we all had one, but where do you see being in this market, and you do your study, you do research, you got your finger on the pulse on this market, but where do you see where this market is moving? As you mentioned, Yuri, that it's plateauing at the moment.
I think over the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of change in growth and dynamic of the types of families that are moving here to the region. We've got some fantastic projects in place at the moment. As we know, the new council chambers and library construction has started, and I know our business has certainly had quite a few families that are working in that project that are coming here and renting in the region. I actually just met with one last week because their lease has come up and they need to move into another property, and they've always been based in Brisbane. And I said to them, are you wanting to then stay here once the project's done? What's your plan? That you have to go on to the next location? And they're actually really open to the idea of staying here. They've realised they've done with being in the really fast-paced city, and they can see the opportunity of what is coming forward now within Hervey Bay, and we haven't had that in the last 5 to 10 years. We've just kind of stayed the same and cruised along. But projects, as much as some like and some don't like the Sheridan, being approved, it is honestly going to be the first stage of fantastic growth and opportunity to see what Hervey Bay can really look like on the bigger scheme of things. And to have such a high quality brand choose our area, it's just going to be the start of so much more to come here to the region.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I think anything like that, we just puts you on the map pretty much straight up.
Yes.
And then everybody wants to know. I have a lot of my investor friends and a lot of investors. I know for the last 2 years, everybody asks, oh, Hervey Bay, we want to put money in Hervey Bay. Nothing.
Yes.
Tell us about Hervey Bay. So people know Hervey Bay now. People know the region. And that's why this big money is coming in, and a lot of people want to invest into this region.
And look, we were talking about social media before. There's lots of the Australian property investors community and all those groups online, and I've got amazing friends in the industry all over Australia, and there'll be different groups that they're in, say in Perth, and they're tagging me in these posts of investors that are asking about Hervey Bay that are all the way over the other side of the country. So I only see that things are going up here for us. It's not going to stop now, which is fantastic.
Do you think, there's always a regulation change in rental market with tenants and everything, legislation. And I know it's a very crazy and in-depth topic that it's like a rabbit hole that you can keep going in, and whether it's right or wrong, you can be which side of the fence you want to be. It's a question that you want to ask, But do you think, is the regulation really strict towards tenants or towards investors?
Yeah, I think for me, there is sides on both. I think there's some sides, and then, you'll have investors listening going, well, what do you mean? There are some sides that I think are more challenging for tenants and also some for investors. But I think at the end of the day, legislation's there for people will test it. So whether that's the landlord or the tenant to test it. But it's also there for us, and that's why you have a property manager, to try and bring both parties together to find mutual ground on making a decision moving forward. And that's something that I've always prided myself on and educated my team on, is that while a legislation is written in a certain way, it's up to us as agents to have that conversation directly with the landlord and the tenant to try and find mutual ground. Even if we don't like the decision or outcome of where it's heading, how can we help mitigate that loss or the situation escalating into something that's more difficult? I guess one, as an example, the changes with the pet laws I think are really challenging for investors, and I completely appreciate that, because there are people that, you know, don't feel comfortable with having pets there at the property, and whether it's due to their own health or their own personal experience, I completely understand that. And the recent one with how often the rent increases can be, now it has to be 12 months before you do your next rent increase. And we have an investor just recently that he's helped someone that he's known within his workspace that experienced domestic violence. And so he then had her in the lease, and the plan was for 12 months, but then she had an opportunity to relocate, which you completely understand. Her first 3 months of the lease was on the rent that he presented to her, and this was after the legislation changes had come through. And so what that then meant was he had her in the property for $520 per week, but this property can achieve $670. So for the next 9 months, he's had to rent it at the lower rate, because that's what legislation requires you to do. Now, in the past, you could have, you know, had a conversation or found some mutual ground to mitigate that. But now, with how it's written, I can be fined as a licensee if I then had a tenant sign a lease at the higher rent and it was challenged. So that's those types of things I find really frustrating and difficult. I do feel that in the last couple of years we've had some pretty hot and heavy legislation changes come in thick and fast, and that's been really disappointing to see. I'm hopeful that maybe the government will do some adjustments with some of the changes that have come in first and foremost, and then maybe look into you know, other areas of other industries to evolve their legislation and give the housing space a little bit of a break. But we've got our next round coming in May around that.
Is it a tenant problem or is it a money problem? Like, is it very hard to get good tenants?
No, I don't think it's very hard to get good tenants. I think it's about being selective, and sometimes there are times where you can have, say, 10 applications in and it's still not the right application for that property.
But why is that? Like, when we say right applicant, what?
So one area is obviously if they've had rental history which hasn't been positive, so whether or not they've caused damage to a property, they haven't fulfilled the exit obligation at the end of the tenancy, or just generally down to attitudes and behaviours as well. And this can sometimes be the same conversation of a landlord too. You know, you don't want to have somebody come into your business, whether they're a tenant or a landlord, that is going to be aggressive, abusive and abrupt and really difficult and just want to do things kind of their own way. But probably the most straightforward one and the simplest area is how much of their income that they earn is actually going into rent. And we've always looked at it to be up to that 30% of their annual income is the contribution to their rent across 12 months.
So that's kind of a benchmark that you look at.
Absolutely. However, we do have tenants that are as high as 40% of their income goes into their rent, and they're fantastic tenants, but they're not the type of people that you're going to see having their smashed avocado on, you know, sourdough on a sad day, living in their homes. Their main priority, they're very diligent with their bills and they're on top of everything that they need to financially. Rent comes first, they pay their rent, pay the electricity, water, whatever that might be, and you can still rent to those people up to 40%, but you have to, you know, have that history of them demonstrating that they are very capable and diligent and able to do it.
So just to be clear, so if someone's on a 40% of their income, and someone's with a 30% income, they're more likely chance a 30% can get in.
Well, that's what we're seeing. Owners are usually going to go with what is less risk. Yeah.
Oh, I completely knew that actually, that there is a kind of assessment. So now, you know, when you say that history with rental and everything, now, so there is a software that everybody can go and check.
Yes.
As a owner, can I go and check, is it very hush-hush?
No, well, you pay a subscription. So if they've had a default and it's gone through, say, QCAT, and they're on Ticker or Barclays or any of those ones online. The agency pays a subscription, and then they can check. Yeah.
Get the full history of
Yes, exactly.
any damages or anything in the past they've done. So is there anything for investors, homeowners?
Other than if you were doing the investment privately, you would be presented the rental history about those tenants, and then it would be up to you then to make that phone call to the agent and get them to provide you a reference. But on the essence, if they defaulted access to those websites, you have to usually have an agent to do that.
So, as you say about tenants and everything, like in regards to rental and everything, what kind of tenants predominantly that you see in Fraser Coast? Like, when we say demographic, or when you say, okay, ratio-wise, is it healthcare, tourism, construction? You said a lot of people are coming with construction works now. Yeah. So what kind of tenants that you see nowadays?
Certainly, if we look at the medical space, 100%, which is great. What I would like to probably see more in that space is us being able to retain them long term. I do find that it's very transient in the medical space, so we'll have the tenants come through for 12 months, maybe 18 months, and then we're seen as a regional stop for them, so they can tick that off and then go on to the next location. But what I have noticed now that we've gone past the 5-year mark is we've actually had a couple of families where they've come here as a couple, they've gone away and they've come back with their first child, and they want to be living long term in Hervey Bay. So we're seeing a bit of that come through, which is great, because at the end of the day we all want to have the best medical professionals, don't we, in our region. Hence why we've made it our model, and I know we haven't explored on that as much, really easy for people that are moving, from outer area. Another area, interestingly enough, which isn't given enough thought, is the mining sector. So we do have quite a few maybe dads, mums, that they are working away in the mining space, and the families are based here. So the FIFO side, fly in, fly out, lots of that. We do have quite a bit of that, as well as on the projects at the moment, what I referred to with the new council chambers and the library, and out at Torbanley as well with the train building and that's going on there. So, those type of projects, once we see the Radisson Blue project start, again, it brings more families in that are needing a home to rent, and that just continues to give a different demographic, different dynamic to the rental market here in the region.
Do you see a lot of defaults with tenants?
Meaning tenants where we have challenges?
Challenges paying.
Look, it does happen. What I will say is I feel really proud that our brand and the business, and this is probably due to my experience of being in the industry for so long, hasn't seen it to the same level as other businesses in the area. And I know this because over the last 5 years, we've only had to get to the stage of appearing in QCAT 3 times. And the 3 times that we have experienced that, it was based around rent arrears, where obviously they got to that situation where they couldn't continue to pay, and then that's why they were removed from the property. And they haven't got to the point of where there's had to be further action taken. So the bond has then been able to cover and suffice those expenses as well. There are times where tenants will leave properties in not the best state as well, and that's obviously really disappointing and frustrating when that happens. Again, I would suggest it is probably less than most because of the processes that we have in place. Generally, if you're not renewing a lease and the owner wants vacant possession at the end of the lease, if there's trouble brewing there, you're preparing yourself for that at the end of the lease already, so you know what to expect. There's been, I can think of one that has been an abandoned property, 2 actually, but that's in a 5-year period, so it's something I'm really proud of, and I think having the right tenant selection is important. But then also during the tenancy, even the moment they slip 1 day behind, making sure that you're doing the phone call every day, the email every day, and working with them so that they don't continue to stay in that place. We do actually have one tenant at the moment that we're working with that unfortunately I suspect will end up vacating, and they will leave with rent arrears, and we'll go through that QCAT process. And, obviously can't share too much detail, but everyone's circumstances change sometimes, and we just do what we can to help mitigate that loss during that period, and then work on when that next tenant could be available to come in, and then in the background continue to work on the tenant that's vacated and go through the motions there as well, so that they don't have a big vacancy period.
So someone's watching the podcast, what is a QCAT?
QCAT is basically going to court with your tenant is the simplest way to explain it. So you have a judge and you've obviously lodged paperwork and you're wanting to make a claim, whether it's through damages or loss of rent, or it could be a challenge that's come up during the tenancy as well. And the judge is basically the mediator, and the tenant or the landlord can be asked to appear depending on what the matter is.
So it's lodged by the property manager or by the owner?
It can be lodged by any of us. So, yeah, so, traditionally, and most people would talk about the agent lodging it against the tenant. But if the landlord isn't happy, they can obviously lodge a claim against the agent, or the tenants can, if they're not satisfied that they're being met, like the pet clause, changes there as an example. If they're declined the pet and they're not satisfied with that outcome, they can actually take the agent to QCAT to be able to be forcing us to approve them to have the pet at the property as well.
So tenant moves in, pays the rent for 3 months, suddenly stops paying. How many warnings do you get before you get into all this?
Yeah, well, what I will add there is that they can't actually pay 3 months in advance now. So I know all these changes, it gets really confusing, doesn't it? So it's only up to 4 weeks now. That was a recent change that had come in. So when tenants are, say, applying for a property, traditionally you'd see them offer to secure the property 3 months or 6 months in advance, and you can't do that now. So that's another one that's come through. But
so this is 4 weeks rent. That's all you need.
That's all.
4 weeks rent.
Yeah, it's all you're allowed to. It's all we're allowed to accept. Is basically the wording is best to explain it. And then from there, monitoring their arrears, which is what I think we were talking about. They will. Up until before they get the breach notice, they'll have contact with us each day, and then it's a breach notice. If they don't rectify that breach, then it's a notice to leave.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it's a process. It's a process for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
So during this time, if a tenant decides not to pay, he's okay to do that. He can stay in that house while this all stuff is happening.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So you're not forcibly then removed until the QCAT hearing. Yes, and then you do what's called lodging for a warrant of possession with the local police, and then the police would then meet you at the property if they need to be forcibly removed. But in my experience, a lot of the time they're counting their days down, so they're trying to stretch it out as long as they can, and then the warrant's usually issued and then they're gone the next day. Yeah.
So anybody investing in Fraser Coast, what should they keep in mind as investor?
As an investor, the first thing is I think it's a great area to invest in first and foremost. I think for me it's about, like we were talking about earlier in relation to the difference of units and houses, it's about what you're comfortable with your risk as well. We have a handful of investors that are really focused on the unit market, and that's what they do successfully across Australia. And then others, they are looking at more of the 4-bedroom home design. So you do have to be comfortable with the choice that you're making and where you're investing your money. At this point, I think making sure you do the research and not pushing yourself to the extreme where you're concerned and stressed every week about making sure you get that rent coming in to ensure you can actually keep your investment. To me, that would be something that would, be a negative choice to make, because then you're just constantly going to be stressed and wondering why you purchased an investment property. So making sure you're setting yourself up financially and ready for the fact that sometimes things just don't go to plan. And there are sometimes, situations where something can happen in the tenant's world and they can't pay that week, and then they may slip behind those 5 days and it never happens again, let's say. But if you don't have that buffer in your mortgage account to make sure that the mortgage is being paid, they're things that I see that an investor, when they experience that, some just get it and they understand their accounts are topped up, and others are obviously really living week by week, making sure that income comes in to stay ahead.
Do you think people are more inclined towards new home, second-hand house as investors? What investors?
I think it depends. Yeah, it depends on your investment strategy. So we are seeing quite a few that are wanting to go into brand new properties, and a lot of them that are buying within their superannuation now as well. And I think that that's an exciting space to see, because that will now allow depending on the age of the person and how much money they've put into their super, someone that is in their late 30s, early 40s, that maybe it's their first time coming into the property market. I'm obviously not here giving financial advice, but it's another strategy in a way that it could be your way to get your first property, and it won't be the home that you live in, but you've got that investment there that you can work off of as well. We are seeing quite a bit of that now in the last couple of years, and that's exciting to see too, because what we don't want to have happen is continuation of legislation changes that then push the private investors out of the market. It's just only going to continue to put more pressure on the housing crisis.
So as a property manager, what are your 3 pet hates?
Oh, my 3 pet hates. Gosh, that's a good question. I think the first one would just be not being honest.
By both, by tenants and by owners, or by owners?
Yeah, the whole lot. I'm going to throw it all in. So, we're all human and we all make mistakes. And I probably pride myself on that. I see a problem and the team will say it as well. I'm not usually focusing on, oh my God, why did you do this? And, that it's unfixable. I'm straight away in the solution zone. And I'll probably have a conversation with you about it later going, hey, this is what we should be doing next time. And I don't want to see that, same mistake again. So what measures can we put in place? But don't be dishonest or try to hide it, that type of thing. Or don't put your hand up and then, try to fix it yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think COVID's kind of created a bit more of that fear in all of us to, not pick up the phone and have that conversation. And we certainly would prefer, and as an example with tenants, we would prefer that they talk to us openly if they're experiencing, financial difficulties, so that we can have that conversation earlier versus being on the back foot. And then the owners wanting to know where their money is, and we haven't been able to help give them, I guess, a bit of a head start to know what to be prepared for. So definitely being honest. The next pet peeve, I think, would be at our industry, which is, probably the most awkward thing for any property manager that's listening to it right now. I think something that we could do a lot better in the property management space is how we communicate with tenants during that time of when they're looking for a home. We have amazing levels of automation and software that we can use now. And I know that I could do a whole podcast just talking on that with you. But one area that really bothers me is that a lot of businesses are just leaving it down to the automation of how they communicate with tenants when they're looking for a rental property, and don't actually pick up the phone and talk to someone. Now, I know that that's a time-consuming part of what we do at Active Agents, and when we have rental inquiries come in, we pick up the phone and we, talk to the individual to get an understanding of what they're looking for, when they're looking for it. And we can't help everyone. I've always said that to the team, we can't help everyone, but at least they actually feel like they're being heard, especially in this time. So I think as an industry, that's something that we could do better, rather than just shooting off text messages and emails and not actually communicating directly with the tenants. And I actually feel that's a bit why they're getting frustrated with us, and saying that we're doing nothing and we're not helping. I do think that becomes an element of it as well. And the third one, gosh, I don't know if I can think of a third one.
I just put you on the spot. I think two is pretty good.
I'd like us to have more trades here. I guess if you're a trade out there that's listening to it, you're not based in Hervey Bay and you've got a skill, please come to Hervey Bay, because there's some areas, and as you know as well, that it is difficult to get consistency. And with the opportunities and the growth and everything that's happening in Hervey Bay, we need multiple of all, like whether it's plumbers and gas fitters and roofers and all those different things, electricians, we still need so many more of them.
Well, what of the most rewarding experience that you had with property managers? Like, what is the most rewarding?
I think what has been certainly in this last 5 years, if I reflect on that in particular, it is just the absolute joy and excitement that you're hearing from tenants when they're approved for a property. I've honestly had some just absolutely break down in tears that they have been trying to find a home for the last 3-6 months, and they've just kept getting knocked back, kept getting knocked back. And I think that we should all understand and appreciate why that emotion is so high, because for someone to have to wait that long to find a home is a really sad.
But getting knocked back by owners.
They're competing with so many applications.
So how much owners have the intake? How much intake do you have in an application?
So we will just basically present all the facts, and I think that's where there's another thing that can be improved as well in the way of communication in general, is making sure that the owners have all the facts about the applications that are being presented. And if there's areas of concern, I've spoken with some tenants where they haven't realised that they've been constantly 1 to 3 days in arrears because the agent hasn't actually talked to them about it. Yeah. And so then they've gone and rectified that, and then their tenant ledger's been updated. But that was, potentially why they were missing out on properties. So it's just having that open communication there. But yeah, I could list off a ton of different families, and they always usually have kids as well, which makes it quite emotional for me as being a mother as well. That's for me been definitely one of the most rewarding parts, is just hearing how happy they are and how grateful they are that they've just finally got a place to call home.
Yeah. So we got 3 months rent, did you say? Is that 4 weeks rent for investors?
Yeah, so you can't, basically you can't, when you apply, we had it happen quite often where people would present, I'll pay 6 months up front to secure the property. You can't do that now, so it's up to 4 weeks now.
Is this space very crowded when it comes to property management?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, is there a lot of property managers in the market?
No, it would be nice. I think, unfortunately, we're not the most sexiest or attractive role, because we do have that stigma of it being difficult, to do and to navigate and manage people. I've so far found I've had one that has come in, but she had been working within the industry for about 6 months before she started with me and relocated to Hervey Bay. Otherwise, everyone that has been within my organisation has been trained completely from scratch. So they've come out of a totally different industry and then come into the property management space, and then I've shown them, I guess, my way and the way that I see it best, which our clients enjoy as well, of how to do property management.
Usually it's better to get someone new, because then you can mold them the way you want. Because, experience is great, but sometimes the newcomers are the best, I personally feel. Yeah. Because you're open to the ideas, you're open to suggestions that you make, and something best can come out of them too, because they see completely different.
And we really are proactive. I know sometimes it doesn't always seem that way because you can only go at a certain pace, as you know, but it's certainly been the approach that we've taken within our brand and with our team, and that has, I guess, set the forefront of how you can do property management completely in a different way. And I've had some that have gone and completely relocated out of area, and some that have stayed in the industry, and others that have gone off into different roles, and the feedback for them has been, we've talked to them, and this new business owner, we've tried to encourage them to think about the way that you've been doing things. So for me, I spend a lot of my time now with the software that we use, and then I work with a lot of the developers and those that are building different, whether it's new parts within the software or new software that's coming out, and just provide feedback and advice to help not just my business but other property management businesses out there to have more effective programs and software that we can use. And AI plays a big part in that, which has been fantastic.
So what are your commission, what is your structure when it comes to investor?
We do a flat fee, so it's a bit different to your typical percentage base. Part of my philosophy behind that at the time when I first started Active Agents was I just wanted to be really simple and easy and transparent. If you're an investor that comes into our business, it's straightforward, flat fee, it's done, versus the percentage base with the add-ons and stuff as well. So that's been really easy for investors. They know what to expect. Our flat fee isn't as attractive to investors where their properties are under that 500 mark, so we charge $39.50 per week plus GST. Obviously it's really attractive if their properties are up over $700 a week compared to other agents out there, but I wanted to have something that was simple, easy. I could pay my staff well, we could do fun things, which you do see that in our social media space. We've got a great team, great energy, and our clients obviously appreciate being a part of that as well.
Well, I think we're pretty much on the end of our podcast here, Tara. I think we can go probably for hours talking about property market and real estate.
Look, property can go into so many different prongs. It really can.
Idea. We want to get property managers and we call like gurus of this business who understand this market and want to share a lot of knowledge, and we probably, as we grow, we want to bring you back to the podcast and deep dive into the whole different sector of rental market and keep talking about it, of what has improved, what has not improved. Do you want to do a plug to all the investors or anyone watching about your business, what you do? So you just mentioned about the fixed rate. If anybody's looking to rent property, Tara Bradbury here from Active Agent. Do follow her on our socials. They're very, very active. I think you also do monthly reports. I think I've seen that.
We do a monthly video, yes.
Your monthly video from Tara. I think I've personally seen her. She does the whole spiel. But yeah, do follow them. And if you're looking for a property manager, you will be in a very good hands. Thanks, Tara. Thanks for coming to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.